You sit in a dark theater or on your couch watching a movie unfold, and something inside you breaks open. A character dies, sacrifices themselves, or confesses their love, and suddenly you're crying, really crying. But when someone close to you, maybe your partner, your parent, or your friend, tries to open up, you feel nothing. You nod, you say the right words, but inside it's empty. That contrast is not because you lack empathy, it's because fictional empathy is safe. Real empathy is dangerous. What you feel for movie characters is not false emotion, it's unthreatened emotion. The difference lies in control. A fictional story gives you full control of when to engage, when to cry, and when to stop. A real relationship gives you none. The mind treats real intimacy as exposure. For someone who's learned, often from early life, that emotional closeness leads to pain or rejection, the safest way to experience deep feeling is through a one-way channel: a screen, a song, a book. A character can't look at you. They can't challenge your version of the story or force you to explain your own emotions. They can't expect anything back. The same person, when faced with a real human expressing sadness in front of them, unconsciously shuts down. Their body tenses, their thoughts scatter. They may even feel irritation or guilt, but not connection. What's really happening is a defense against being pulled back into that same early emotional chaos. The phenomenon is also rooted in predictability. Fictional relationships are structured. The viewer always knows what to expect. You can rewatch the same scene, and it will always deliver the same feeling. There's no risk that the character will disappoint you, insult you, or abandon you. In real life, emotional exchanges are chaotic. They depend on timing, tone, and vulnerability, things you can't script or predict. For someone with an emotional black hole, that chaos feels unbearable. It's not a lack of love, it's the mind's way of staying safe by avoiding what it cannot control. Neuroscientifically, this makes sense. The same brain regions that activate during social connection, like the medial prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, also activate during engagement with fictional characters. But in fiction, the brain does not trigger the fight or flight response that comes with real emotional exposure. In real interactions, especially with someone who matters, the stakes are higher. There's potential loss, judgment, and rejection. The brain's alarm systems wake up, overriding empathy with self-protection. What looks like coldness is actually a physiological defense, a survival reflex learned in environments where vulnerability was unsafe. In a way, the emotional black hole is a kind of emotional dissociation. You can feel empathy in abstract, intellectualized, or mediated forms, but not in direct, embodied ones. You can cry for a stranger on screen because that sadness doesn't require you to act, change, or risk your own security. It's a passive empathy, pure in emotion, but limited in action. When someone in real life asks for your understanding, the empathy shifts from passive to active. It demands response, engagement, and possibly rejection. That's when the wall rises. A striking example of this can be seen in people who are highly creative or introspective. Many writers, artists, and thinkers report feeling more connected to fictional worlds than to their own lives. They channel their empathy into characters because the emotional weight of reality feels too heavy. In those moments, fiction becomes both an escape and a substitute. It's the emotional laboratory where they can explore love, loss, and grief without having to live through the instability those emotions bring when shared with real people. This pattern becomes self-reinforcing. The more you invest emotionally in safe, fictional spaces, the more intolerant you become of emotional risk in real relationships. You start avoiding difficult conversations, downplaying your needs, or detaching when someone else expresses theirs. The unconscious belief is simple but powerful. If I care too much in real life, I'll lose control. Over time, that belief turns into habit, and habit turns into identity. You start seeing yourself as emotionally distant or numb, when in reality, you're just emotionally guarded. The mind has redirected feeling away from risk and into safety. The paradox is that people with an emotional black hole often crave connection more than anyone else. They long for closeness, but when it appears, their defenses activate like alarms. The closeness that they ache for also feels like a trap. A partner's love feels suffocating. A friend's vulnerability feels like pressure. But a fictional character's pain feels pure, tragic, and manageable. You can feel it fully without consequence. That's why it's easier to cry at a film than to comfort someone crying next to you. The movie doesn't look back. It doesn't demand reciprocity. To understand this psychologically, you have to see it not as apathy, but as emotional control. People who feel deeply for fictional stories often use them as emotional regulators. They process grief, fear, or love in that context because it's safe. The problem isn't the empathy, it's the avoidance of the emotional unpredictability of reality. When someone who truly matters shows emotion, it threatens that control. It forces a level of engagement that the psyche has learned to fear. So it shuts down, not because it doesn't care, but because caring feels dangerous. The same defense can appear in other forms. Someone may be incredibly empathetic toward global suffering, war, famine, or tragedy, but emotionally detached from their own relationships. They can feel sorrow for the world, but frustration or numbness toward their family. The larger the emotional distance, the safer the empathy feels. When empathy gets too close, it becomes personal, and personal means vulnerable. That's when the emotional black hole swallows the feeling whole, leaving only the illusion of coldness behind. This disconnect is not irreversible. It is a pattern that reflects the mind's survival instincts rather than a permanent loss of capacity. But it does require awareness to understand that your deep feelings for art, music, and story are not fake. They're displaced. They represent the full range of your emotional potential that has been redirected away from danger and towards safety. Recognizing that is the first step toward reconnecting feeling with reality, understanding that empathy can exist without control, and that true intimacy is not safety, it's trust. And if this breakdown of the emotional black hole helped you understand something you've never been able to explain before, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to The Fictionist for more insights into the psychology of human emotion and the stories we tell ourselves to survive. You do not realize how much control shapes your emotions until you notice where you allow them to exist. The same person who breaks down watching a movie death scene can sit stone-faced during a real argument. That isn't coldness, it's control. The mind builds walls where it once felt powerless. When you've lived through moments where your feelings were used against you, you start to associate vulnerability with danger. So you do what the psyche does best. You protect. You build a system of emotional management, not through logic, but through distance. That's what the defense mechanism of control really is, an emotional thermostat designed to keep your inner world from ever overheating again. It starts small. Someone opens up to you and you feel a flicker of discomfort. Maybe you don't even register it as fear. You just feel the urge to pull back. You listen, but you don't lean in. You say the right things, but you keep the door closed. You're managing the moment. You are keeping the temperature of connection low enough that you don't lose control of your feelings. To others, it looks like detachment. To your nervous system, it feels like survival. Control becomes the substitute for safety. If you can predict the emotional landscape, you can't be blindsided. You avoid the sudden swings, the unpredictable tears, anger, or dependency that once made you feel trapped. This is why people who carry emotional trauma often prefer fictional emotion. In fiction, the story obeys you. You choose when to start, when to stop, when to rewatch, and when to walk away. There are no surprises. Even heartbreak happens on schedule. You can surrender completely to a film because you know it will end exactly how it's supposed to. Real life offers no such promise. In real relationships, you can do everything right and still lose someone. You can love fully and still be misunderstood. That's the kind of chaos the defense mechanism of control exists to prevent. You might notice it in the way some people rehearse their emotions before sharing them. They plan what to say, how to sound calm, how not to show too much. They speak about their pain like they're narrating someone else's story. That's control. It's emotional choreography, a way of ensuring that vulnerability never gets messy. But the truth is, real connection is always messy. It's unpredictable, full of miscommunication, fear, and sometimes rejection. For someone who's been burned by those experiences, that uncertainty feels unbearable. So they build a quiet system of control. Don't go too deep, don't rely too much, don't need too strongly. It's not apathy, it's engineering. The mind is keeping the chaos out. Think about the person who feels safer comforting others than being comforted. They're always the strong one, the calm one, the listener. They can handle anyone's crisis but freeze when someone offers them the same kindness. That's the defense mechanism of control in disguise. When they're helping, they're in charge. When they're being helped, they lose control. The emotional balance shifts, and their nervous system interprets that as threat. To regain stability, they push the closeness away, sometimes without even realizing it. Control shows up in relationships as emotional precision. The person knows exactly how much to give and when. They measure affection like currency. If they sense rejection, they withdraw preemptively. If they sense love, they ration it back. To the outside world, it looks calculating. Inside, it feels like balance. They're trying not to relive that unbearable moment when they once gave everything and lost everything. Every small withdrawal, every guarded response, every half-hearted "I'm fine" is an act of emotional self-preservation. You can see it most clearly when conflict arises. A partner gets angry and the controlled person goes silent. They shut down, not out of spite, but out of fear of emotional escalation. Anger, even when it's safe, feels like chaos. Chaos threatens the illusion of control. The same person might later cry while watching a scene of reconciliation in a movie, because there they can finally feel the emotion they suppressed in real life. The screen becomes a controlled outlet for what reality made unsafe. The defense mechanism of control isn't just about keeping others out, it's also about keeping the self contained. When you've internalized that strong emotions lead to rejection or punishment, you learn to manage your internal world with precision. You dissect every feeling before expressing it. You turn emotion into analysis. You replace vulnerability with understanding. It's safer to explain your feelings than to show them. That's why people who intellectualize their emotions often seem calm on the outside while burning inside. They're processing everything through the filter of control. Imagine a child growing up in a volatile home, one day met with affection, the next with anger. That child learns that love and danger are linked. They adapt by monitoring everything: tone, expression, timing. As adults, they continue that monitoring in relationships. They're hyper-aware of shifts in mood, always anticipating emotional weather changes. They appear composed, but their nervous system is always on alert. When faced with genuine intimacy, their instinct isn't to open up. It's to manage, to regulate, to stay one step ahead. That management becomes their comfort zone. This mechanism often gets mistaken for emotional maturity. People might even admire it: the calm friend, the rational partner, the one who never overreacts. But under that surface lies an ongoing calculation: how to stay close enough to connect, but far enough not to drown. Control is not the absence of feeling, it's the governance of feeling. It's emotion with a leash on it. You can see this dynamic in creative people too. Many writers, actors, and directors channel their emotional intensity into art precisely because it gives them control over the narrative. They decide when pain begins and when it ends. They edit reality into meaning. That's the secret function of creativity for the emotionally guarded. It transforms chaos into form. The art becomes a safe playground for all the feelings that real life cannot contain. When you cry at a character's death, you're participating in that control. The emotion has boundaries, it lives inside the story and nowhere else. The problem is that control, while it keeps you safe, also keeps you isolated. Emotional depth requires surrender. It demands that you give up the outcome, that you risk the chaos of being misunderstood, hurt, or changed. For someone with a strong defense mechanism of control, surrender feels like self-erasure. They believe that if they let go, they'll be consumed. They confuse vulnerability with powerlessness, so they tighten their grip. They keep emotions neat, predictable, cinematic. The irony is that this very control prevents them from ever experiencing the safety they're chasing, because safety in love doesn't come from control, it comes from trust. When the mind depends too much on control, every unpredictable emotional moment feels like a threat. A partner crying feels like loss of balance. A sudden confession feels like invasion. So the person withdraws, not because they don't care, but because their emotional system can't handle that level of unpredictability. They might feel guilt afterward. They might replay the moment in their head, wishing they could have responded differently. But when it happens again, their instinct takes over. Control first, empathy second. It's a reflex built over years of emotional exposure therapy gone wrong. There's another layer to this mechanism: control over perception. People who use emotional control as defense often curate how others see them. They show empathy when it's expected, distance when it's safe. They keep people guessing just enough to prevent anyone from fully entering their world. That ambiguity gives them leverage. It ensures they're never completely seen and therefore never completely vulnerable. They live half in and half out of intimacy, balancing the desire for closeness with the fear of collapse. But despite the careful management, the emotional hunger never disappears. Late at night, watching a movie, the walls fall, the tears come, the control fades. That's when the truth shows itself. Not that they can't feel, but that they feel everything too deeply to risk showing it. Fiction becomes the valve that releases the pressure. It's the safe space where their heart can finally be unguarded, even if only for a few minutes. Then, when the credits roll, the walls go back up. They return to order, to control, to safety. Breaking this pattern doesn't mean losing control. It means learning a new form of it. The real strength lies in the ability to tolerate emotional unpredictability without shutting down. It's understanding that love and pain often coexist, and that safety is built through presence, not distance. The goal isn't to destroy the defense mechanism of control. It's to retire it, to let it rest, to allow the heart to do what it was built to do: connect, risk, and recover. And if this deep dive into the defense mechanism of control helped you see your own emotional patterns in a new light, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to The Fictionist, where we explore the hidden psychology behind why we feel what we feel, and why control, no matter how protective, can never replace connection.